Today, the Nifty has slipped. It's gone below 17,900 and 60% of the Nifty stocks have ended in the red. We have with us, of course, we have been discussing all that has been going on. What are the triggers? What we can expect as far as the markets are concerned in the kind of situation that we are currently in. The situation is this, that we are unique in emerging economies. That's what the finance minister is pointing towards. Western banks, she says, are responding to a kind of synchronized method of interest rate hikes because their rates have remained low in the past, she says. She also says that none of us would want inflation to go out of control. The RBI, she believes, is watching the Indian economy and is taking a call as and when required. That's the gist of what she said today. But really, what does this mean for the Indian economy, for consumers as well that are facing this price rise and the resilience that we've seen in the stock markets in 2023? Is that going to continue or not? And very importantly, is the RBI going to take a different trajectory from what we've seen their Western counterparts do, or is it going to be forced into following that same trajectory going ahead from here? Let's first listen in to what the finance minister has said, and then we'll get feedback on the many questions that we have about this concern when it comes to the global economic slowdown and its impact. First, here's what the finance minister said.
Inflation control के लिए मैंने बजट रिप्लाई के द्वारा एक नहीं बहुत सारे कदम जो केंद्र सरकार ने उठाया उसको लिस्ट आउट किया। उसमें मैं इस उदाहरण के लिए 3-4 आपके सामने रख रही हूँ। बहुत सारे स्टेप्स हमने उठाया। शायद पिछले 12 वीक्स और 24 वीक्स में, वो मैं करेक्ट करना चाहती हूँ, 24 वीक्स सबसे लोवेस्ट लेवल में आया है WPI। सो इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल के लिए बहुत सारे कदम सरकार उठा रही है और कंटिन्यूअस उसमें ध्यान देते रहेंगे।
So that's a portion of what the finance minister has said. Let's put this in context and get feedback from the experts, the economists and market experts joining us on the show. Manisha Singh is Chief Investment Officer at Crossbridge Capital. He's with us along with Mythili, Bhusnurmath, our consulting editor here at ET Now. Great to have you both with us this evening. Mythili, coming to you first, we heard the finance minister say that private sector investment is currently expanding, but she is pointing towards global recession as a possible cause of a slowdown in demand that would possibly hurt Indian industry. How deep a challenge do you see India Inc. As far as the challenge on its hands is concerned when you look at global demand for what we manufacture?
Well, it is the fact that exports have already slowed down. We saw that in the data for the previous month, where we saw the trade data saying exports contracting quite substantially. And it is a fact that India cannot remain an island of prosperity when the whole world is going through a slowdown. So it will impact us definitely. Yes, it is true that we are better off than many of our peers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a good position vis-a-vis the rest of the world entirely. Because the fact is that we are living in a globalized world, and whatever happens abroad does impact us, whether it is in terms of the slowdown in demand from the West, also in terms of the hiking of interest rates in the West. Both will affect us. So I think we are in for fairly tough times. Yes, not as bad as in our neighborhood, whether it is Pakistan or Sri Lanka, but certainly things could have been better if the external environment were also better. Unfortunately, it's not. So we'll have to kind of, live through that.
I was just listening to what Montek Singh Ahluwalia is saying in a program that is playing out even as we speak, Mythili, and that's my follow-up to you, because everyone is pointing towards 7% growth, GDP growth, looking at like a real possibility as far as the Indian economy is concerned. If it does remain at that level, would you say that the impact would be as strong of a possible global slowdown?
7% is just a number. It is so one shouldn't take too much kind of optimism. One should not take too much cheer from that for the simple reason that 7% is not our maximum potential. We could grow faster if we had done things better, particularly if the RBI had caught on to inflation and had not missed the bus. It was behind the curve like many central banks. But the fact is that other central banks being behind the curve does not justify our Reserve Bank of India being behind the curve. As a result of which we have seen inflation persist at beyond the RBI's inflation target range for much longer than it has in other countries. So that is certainly crimping our economic growth at this particular juncture. So 7% is not our real potential, nor is it enough for us to kind of really make that leap forward and move much more, many more of our people beyond the poverty level. So it's neither as good as it can get, but certainly, as I said, things are not so bleak. We have done relatively better, particularly if you look at the subcontinent.
Please do comment on this from what Mythili is saying and how real and potent you think the threat of Western recession is. How far reaching it's going to be according to you? What are the estimates that you're working with? And do you see its protracted impact on emerging economies like India?
Vikram, is that for me?
Yes, Manish, for you.
Sorry, yes. Well, I mean, I would say that, I am in the camp that we are going to see a recession in the US, irrespective of what's happening now, because the expectations are again building up that Fed will have to raise rates. Now, the more the Fed raises rates, as I have said for a few weeks now, the more precarious it makes the US economy. Let's not forget, even if people who are talking about the retail sales number, year-on-year growth of 6%, that's nominal number, right? So on real terms, if you take 6% inflation, the real increase actually has been flat. And if you look at other stats that I like to point out is housing starts. Housing starts have been falling for 9 months in a row. And if you go back and look in history, most of such long streaks have ended in a recession. Now, the recession could have been avoided or maybe should have been avoided if Fed was to relent. But based on the current expectation of how the market is looking at it, if we are going to see another 2 rate hikes and taking the federal fund rate to 5.25 or something, then I don't think it bodes really well for US economy. So I am firmly in the camp that if Fed raises rate, which it looks like it may have to, and it takes the rate to 5.25 and keeps it there for maybe another quarter or 3-4 months, then I think it'll set US into a recession in second half of the year. Now, they could avoid that by not raising rates, by saying that, they are looking past the number, but that we will only come to know in a month or 2 months' time, because the next CPI print is on March the 14th. And that's when we'll find out how much worried the Fed is. In my opinion, they shouldn't be, because there's one last comment I'll make on this. If you look at the chart, CPI X shelter, and shelter is almost 1/3 of the CPI basket. If you look at that, then over last 6 months, that is actually already in disinflation. The 6 months change in that, annualized 6 months change, is minus 1.6%. This is CPI X shelter. So in my opinion, I have absolutely no doubt that inflation is falling very fast. Disinflation is going to be the key thing that people will have to worry about. But in the meantime, we have this noise which might push Fed to make a mistake, and that will set a recession. So let's see what happens in the next 2 meetings.
Well, here in India, the finance minister has mentioned that central banks in the West, they are moving in the synchronized way in the interest rate hikes. But for emerging markets, the situation is different from the West in that they've had historically low interest rates. We'll see exactly what the RBI does next. But unfortunately, that's the limited time that I have, because I'm being asked to cut across to an event that is taking place. So I'm afraid we'll have to wrap up this discussion with Mythili and Manish. And of course, we'll